Okay. All right. Here we go. Good evening. My name is Dorothy Malone, Administrative Assistant to Dr. Kelly Clenchy, Superintendent of Schools. It is 6 p.m. on Tuesday evening, September 8th. I would like to welcome you to the Grade 6 Parent Orientation Night. Please note that we will not be using the chat function during this meeting. However, we will give some time for questions using the raise your hand function that are available to you with Zoom. If you called in by phone, push *9, which will also activate the raise your hand function. I will call upon the raised hands one at a time. Once called upon, participants will be unmuted and be asked to ask your question. Thank you, and I'd like to now open up this meeting to Middle School Principal Jason Everhart.
Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone who's here. Before we get started, I just want to, say how much I appreciate Dorothy for helping us pull all this together, and for Judy and David, LCTV, to give up their time. It means a lot for them to be here, and I just want to say a big thank you to them for their time. We also have a handful of our Littleton Middle School teachers here, so we'll give an opportunity to say hello in a second. As Dorothy said, I'm Jason Everhart. I'm the principal of the school. I'd like to take a second and introduce our assistant principal, Matt Levangie.
Hey, how's everyone doing? Glad to be here tonight.
Our ELA teacher, Diane Tricana.
Hi, how are you? I'm looking forward to meeting all of your kids.
Our math teacher, Joanne Deary.
Hi, I'm Joanne. I'm looking forward to meeting your children and getting to know them.
Our science teacher, Vaughn Cook.
Vaughn, is she there?
She is, but she's on mute.
Okay. Vaughn, where is she? Vaughn, you're muted. She can't unmute. There you go.
I am.
There you go.
Hopefully it's not a preview of what the year is going to be, right? I am looking forward to introducing all your kids to this wonderful world of science this year.
We have Barbara Dickman, our special education teacher. Barbara, you around?
Barbara. There you go, Barbara.
Hi, it's nice to meet everyone and looking forward to working with your students. This year.
Thank you very much, all of you. I know we have some of our Unified Arts teachers in the room. I don't know if they want to say hello, so I won't call anyone out unless you want to be heard. You can certainly raise your hand, and Dorothy will pop you up on the screen. And so while that happens, I just want to kind of break down a little bit of what tonight's going to look like. The goal is to make this, efficient but informative. We'd like, out of respect for our teachers who are giving up their evening to be here, and for those that are working on hosting this, we'd like to wrap things up by 7 at the latest. So we'll move quickly. We have a little presentation, lots of information. Many of you emailed questions to ask, and we'll be sure to ask and answer those, and then have a little quick Q&A there at the end. So that's pretty much how it'll work. The first thing that I want to say is that there is massive amounts of work that have gone into making this September school year get off the ground. From our administrative team to our teachers to front office staff, our custodian, people have been working so hard over the last few weeks to really make everything ready. I'm really very excited. Our plan has come together. We're executing the last few parts of it. Our teachers are getting ready, and I think we're going to have a really great year, despite a pandemic, despite the challenges of remote learning and hybrid learning. I think this is going to be. Well, I know this is going to be a year that everyone in this room is going to remember for the rest of their life. We're always going to remember the fall of 2020, and so in that way, it's kind of nice to be, live in someone's head as a part of history for a while. And your kids are certainly going to remember this too, and hopefully it's the last time we have to go through this. So as we get forward, if there are questions that we didn't get to address, please ask, and we'll certainly do that. One thing I will say, this is not a school committee meeting. So we are not doing 5 hours of Q&A. We're going to keep it light. We're going to keep it informative. But if we don't get to a question that you want to ask, if you have a question specific to your child, or if it's a larger district or state level question, I'll just ask that if you either email myself or Matt Levangie privately, we'll get back to you this week. We also have a school committee coming up on a meeting on Thursday. You're welcome to ask those questions there. So those things, this is really just going to be about Littleton Middle School and specific to 6th grade, what you can expect as we move forward. Some of you have been through the middle school before in terms of older children, so this might be kind of old hat for some of you. Some of you have never had a student go through the Littleton Public Schools, and this is the first time. And so we understand that there's a bit of anxiety and uncertainty. And in normal years, we would have opened up the building and done a series of group tours and let the kids walk the building and had a chance to see everything. We'd bring parents in, let you see it, have an opportunity to meet, and just know that it's unfortunately it's regrettable that we don't get to do that. But safety protocols are what they are, and unfortunately, it's just not a situation where we can do that. I know I spoke with Cheryl Temple at Russell Street, and she's not able to do the same at her school, and so this is as close as we can approximate to a tour and a welcome to Littleton Middle School night. So we're glad you're here, and hopefully it'll give you all the information that you're looking for. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. A couple things, Matt, if you want to pull up the presentation, we'll go ahead and get started with that. So the first thing before we go through it, while he does that, there are some expectations that we have in terms of safety that we've put into place, and we'll certainly go through all of those here in just a second. But the first one, and really the most important, and this is a non-negotiable thing. We need every student entering our building, every adult enter our building has to wear a mask and has to keep the mask on. We'll talk about arrival and dismissal procedures here in a few minutes, but just know we just cannot let a student into the building who does not have a mask on. So if the child forgot it, if the child willfully just took it off and said, forget it, I'm not wearing it, or my mom says I don't have to, not getting in the building. We really have to maintain the safety of the 200 students that'll be there, the 40 educators that'll be there, and plenty of other workers. And so I just want to be open and honest with you. That's our first line of defense. Students and parents don't get in the building without having a mask on. Once the students have entered the building, it'll be a situation where they have to keep the mask on. So a kid just coming through the doors and taking the mask off, that just can't happen either. We are going to make sure that kids stay masked at all times, and we'll talk about mask breaks and a lot of that stuff here in just a minute. So I just want to start off with that this is something that we feel very passionate about. It is the safety of our educators. We have a lot of nervous and anxious people in our building, as does every building across the country. We are no different, and out of respect to our educators and to our families, we just want to make sure that that's the case. So it needs to be an actual mask purchased at home or by home. Neck gaiters don't count. Bandanas that are tied off around don't count. Pulling a shirt up over the nose doesn't count. We really need parent support when it comes to this. We all know that middle schoolers can sometimes be a little challenging with some of the behaviors that they want to show. This is one of those things that we just don't have the ability to say, well, next time wear it, or next time, try to remember. So just know that going forth. And we'll certainly talk about what that will look like for kids who don't have them. So, Matt, were you able to pull up the presentation?
Is it presenting now? It's presenting on my screen.
Okay, that's great, because I can't see it on mine. So
It's not on the screen. No.
So if you go to share screen and then select PowerPoint.
Yeah. Share screen. Is that it? Is it presenting now?
No.
All right. Well, we'll go without it. So basically, while Matt works on that, I'll just go ahead and get started. So this year, middle school is in some ways similar to the elementary experiences that some of you had at Russell Street, but it's its own entire thing. For the first time, for many of our students, this is where they move through the middle school, and they're not in the same group of kids all day long.
Excuse me, Jason.
Yep.
I just want to let you know it is up.
Okay, gotcha.
Very
Excellent.
first screen.
Yay. All right. Thank you. All right, Matt, if you go to the second slide for me here.
Yep.
So as you all know, we're in our hybrid model. Next slide, please. So a couple of things that we want to address. Part of making this process work is really about responsibility and everybody in the school having a set of responsibilities. And some of this is stuff, if you were at our parent forum a couple of weeks ago, you would have seen. So some of this is review, but some of you may not have seen it. So we'll just go through it quickly. One of the things that's going to separate this fall from the spring is that attendance is compulsory. It's mandatory in all the classes. In the spring, there were a lot of optional times where kids could attend, where teachers could, have a meeting, but it wasn't necessarily mandatory. As of September 16th, that'll change. So that's a nice bit of accountability. I know we had a lot of parents who were struggling with their children to get them online and to get them to stay in classes. Having this mandatory part of it will certainly help you at home get students ready. It'll certainly help our teachers prepare for their classes. We're going to ask that faces are shown by students during live instruction. While there will always be an exception to the rule, and we can certainly talk about what that might look like for certain kids, we are asking by far the majority to really show their faces. It is not uncommon for kids to want to hide themselves, put up an avatar, put up something funny, and we want to make sure, and our teachers want to make sure, that students are engaged, that they're attentive, and they're participating. And it's difficult to do that if we don't see them. One of the things that we're going to ask is that kids don't walk around the room with their computer. They're not going to and from the fridge with their computer. They're not laying in bed while they're taking a class. We hope that all students will be in front of their computer and be as ready as they can in sixth grade for the live instruction that's going to happen. We are asking students that they charge their Chromebooks and that they have their materials ready to go, just like it was a regular school day, and that they complete their projects and their homework in a timely manner. Our educators have responsibilities. We're going to return our grading policies and our late work policies to pre-COVID expectations. In the spring, it was difficult for us and for many of our educators because late work and certain things being optional meant that our teachers were getting crushed at the end of the year with late work being turned in. And so we're going to go back to those pre-COVID expectations around homework and grading. One of the things that we are asking our educators to do is really work with their teams to have a clearly defined schedule for assignments and homework so that students aren't being walloped by a heavy load of homework on a Monday and Tuesday and then nothing, Thursday and Friday. And we're certainly going to talk about homework and what that might look like here in a minute as well. And then we also are asking our educators to really make sure that there is clear and consistent communication with families. Last year was just kind of thrust upon us, and I think people were just doing the best they could to get by. But now that we've had a summer to prepare, and now that we've had a fall to prepare, or the start of a fall to prepare, we're going to ask that communication with families be consistent and ongoing so that everybody is aware of what's happening. If you go to the next slide, Matt. So administration has responsibilities, doing town hall events like this one to make sure that families are aware of what's happening, of what the expectations are. We are going to do our best to streamline that communication for updating parents so that you're not getting 10 emails from 10 different people. We really want to find a way to make sure that the email communication that you get from us is something that you pay attention to when it arrives. So that's something we'll be working on and developing and refining as the year goes on. It's also our job to create professional development opportunities for our teachers so that they can be the best that they can be. And one thing that I will ask every parent in this room to remember is that this is a brand new style of teaching for every educator in our building and across Littleton Public Schools. And while I am almost over the moon about our staff and their ability to handle this, there are going to be learning curves and there are going to be hiccups and there are going to be things. And that's part of my job and Matt Levangi's job to help provide those opportunities for teachers to perfect their craft, to learn from others, to consider new and creative ways to engage your students. And then finally, there are some responsibilities from families that we have that really will help us do our job real well. So for example, establishing routines at home. For students that are remote or at least at home on a hybrid day, we ask that routines are established, right? Getting kids up during the regular school day so that they're awake and ready to go at 7:20. If there's a quiet space for them in the house to be able to have so they can focus on the schoolwork, that's great. They have headphones if they need, that things are charged, they have all the materials handy. There is going to be a partnership that we're going to have to enter into to make this thing work. And I know our families will certainly take on that challenge. Over the course of the next week, something that would be really great for families, if you have not done so, preparing students to wear the masks for extended periods of time. It takes time to get used to wearing that, especially on a warm day. Whether you're starting for 15 minutes tomorrow and 30 minutes the next day, getting used to wearing them for extended periods of time so that kids aren't getting annoyed or aggravated or frustrated by the mask, that it just becomes a part of the process. And then just thinking about a plan, if your child were to get sick, if your child were to show symptoms, and I have to call you and say, you got to come to the school and pick them up and you're at work and can't, is there a plan so that somebody can come get the child so that they're not sitting in a COVID room or in the lobby or outside waiting for a ride for 2 hours? One of the things that we'll do is ask that you reach out to your network of family and friends to develop that plan. So if there should be a problem, that somebody's able to pick up the child in case of illness. All right, next slide, Matt. So one of the ways that we would look at grouping our students, essentially, we are dividing our students into 4 groups, not equal groups, but 4 groups. There are the students that are hybrid, that are last names are begin with A through K. There's another group that their last names are L through Z. We have a third group of students who are fully remote, and then a fourth group who will be attending school 4 days based on improvement plan documents and things like that. So we'll be reaching out to those families if you haven't heard from us already in the next coming days. So there are essentially 4 groups that are going to be in or around or virtually in the school at all times, and we'll show what that looks like. One of the things that we're going to ask is that all students attend Flex Block. Flex is a homeroom, essentially. It's a place where students will start their day for the first 15 minutes. And this is true at every grade level, but 6th grade, this will be something new. Your child will be assigned a teacher, one of the 5 or 6 teachers that we have on the 6th grade team. They will go to that teacher every morning. That'll be as soon as they walk in the building, that's the class that they will go to. When they are online, that's the class that they will go to. So everybody starts off in Flex. And how we're really approaching Flex is, it used to be a 30-minute block, and what we're doing is we're breaking it up into 2 parts. And so the morning part is really a check-in. How are you? What's going on? How was your night? How was your weekend? Non-academic conversation, opportunities for kids to get to know each other a little bit if they don't, for kids to interact virtually. That'll happen during that time. And then at 7:35, kids will go to their first class. So whether you're remote or hybrid, you'll be attending Flex. As many of you know, we are grouping siblings into the same groups. So as long as the children live in the same household, even if the last names are different, we will certainly make sure that they attend schools on those same days. And where possible, we're going to try and create the schedules to keep students as close to cohort models as we can, but recognizing that that won't be fully possible given the nature of the middle school schedule. All right, Matt, next. So here you can see a sort of a sample schedule of what that might look like. Across the top, you'll see the 4 models, A, B, C, and D, the 4 groups, and then you'll see the times. If you look at our schedule, we use a rotating schedule. So on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, students will attend their classes in the order of section 1 through 5, from the beginning to the end. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we reverse that order. So they'll go from 5 to 1. This might seem really confusing to a number of students and to a number of parents. But if you think about it like this, it's an opportunity for students who maybe have their toughest class in the morning on a Monday, when maybe they're not at their best, might have it towards the end of the day on a Tuesday when they've had a chance to get into their day. So by creating this rotating schedule, it might seem confusing. What we're really doing is just talking about the order of classes. They'll have the same classes every day, aside from the UAs, which we'll talk about in a second, but they'll have the same teacher for math, the same teacher for ELA and down the like. They'll just go in a different order. I can tell you, the kids pick it up really fast. After about a day and a half, they've got it. So if you have questions around the schedule or what it looks like, we'll go through a slide here and I can show you a little bit, but that's how our schedule works, right? Sections 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with a UA block and the lunch block mixed in the middle, and a Flex to begin the day, a check-in, and a Flex moment at the end to check in, just to see how the day went, to gather your things. So for students with executive functioning difficulties or organizational difficulties, this is an opportunity to get your bags ready, make sure you have everything you need before you leave the building, so that we're sending every kid out with what they need. Matt, next slide, please. So this is a sample schedule. This is from an unnamed sixth grader. So I just took a screenshot. If you look at it, the schedule that you're going to see when you do get them will look a lot like this. And that's why I say this can look very, very confusing. But please just know that once the kids get into it. So if you look at the Monday column, you'll see that it says Flex Block 6, Vaughn Cook. This child has Vaughn all the way across all 5 days to start the day, and they'll go see Vaughn at the end of the day for the last 10 minutes. So that part will be consistent regardless of the day. Monday, the student will go to art for the first class, then they'll go to math, world language, and you keep going down the line. If you go to Tuesday, essentially it's almost the exact reverse of it, except for the UAs. You'll see ELA, social studies, science, world language, and math going in the opposite direction. Students in sixth grade this year will have their unified arts the first full period of the day. It's an 80-minute block, which is going to be different and unique for some kids and definitely different for our UA teachers. And I know they're working really hard to take on the challenge that I have put on their shoulders to have these 80-minute blocks. And one of the reasons that we did this, just for anybody who's curious, the goal was to really reduce the number of classes that students have during the day to minimize passing times. And so while we couldn't obviously get rid of a class, so we thought it was better to just combine the UA classes. When normally they would have a 45-minute class on Monday and the same class on a Tuesday, we just combine them into one larger class. You'll notice that each of the 5 days, a student has a different unified arts class. So in this case, art, then health, chorus, phys ed, and computers to round out the week. And that'll be the first 80 minutes during that time. So they'll leave flex and they'll head to that class. For those students and parents who are worried, oh my God, is my kid going to be able to find it? Our teachers, myself, Mr. Levangi, our teaching assistants will all be everywhere around the school to make sure a student gets where they need to be. If your student is worried about showing up late those first few days, please let them know we are not going to be worried about it. Kids are learning a new building with all kinds of different expectations. We are not going to certainly ever be angry with a student who showed up late the first few weeks of school because they don't know where their classes are. And so that's where we will be in the hallways helping students get to where they need to go. But essentially, that's how our schedule works. You'll notice that lunchtime is the same time across all 5 days. The flex is the same, so there are some consistencies. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday are the same, except for the UA. Tuesday and Thursday are the same. So you can see it has the class name, it has the teacher name, and it has the room number there. So students can always find the room if they're not really sure where they're going. All the classes that say like 102, 103, that's first floor in the sixth grade hallway. Anything with a 2 is in the second floor, and we'll certainly show kids where those are. And we have a virtual tour that we'll walk you through here in just a second. But those are the schedules that you can anticipate getting here very shortly. Matt, next slide. So one of the things that we really talked about in terms of what is September of 2020 going to look like? It's a whole different world, obviously. And we just want to make sure that we're providing a consistent experience for our students and for our staff. And so one of the conversations that we've had at the grade levels and also at the team leader levels, well, what are the things that we across the school say, listen, these are our big 3 rules that we have to make sure that everybody is prepared for. And so we came up with this, and I love it. Being a basketball fan, right? The big 3. So these are the big 3 rules that we have, that when students sit down into their class, whether they're in the class or whether they're taking the class remotely at home, that when they log on, the camera's on, that the microphone is off. And it'll take training, getting students used to it, turning and muting and unmuting themselves. And that the phone is silent. And we'll talk about the phone in a second. But these are our big 3, all students across the grades. These are the 3 rules that you can expect to hear from us constantly. Camera on, mic off, phone silent. There are enough distractions with being online anyway. We want to make sure that we can try and eliminate those as many as possible. What will happen from here is the 6th grade team might develop its own subset of rules. They might have certain things that are specific to the 6th grade experience, because sixth graders entering Littleton Middle School are in a very different place than our eighth graders. So the eighth grade team might have a slightly different set of expectations as well. And so that's why we didn't want to create a long laundry list of rules. We want to keep it short and easy to remember. Camera on, mic off, phone silent. Matt, you want to go to the next slide, please? And so one of the things that we want to address in the time that we have here, cell phones. Some of you have not purchased cell phones for your children, and we all think that's wonderful. Some kids already have it, and in the time of a pandemic, we certainly understand the need and the security for having it. One of the problems that we run into, though, is students in middle school become increasingly social. And as they discover social media and they discover the ability to be on the phone, it can create problems in the classroom and the hallways. And so how do we effectively deal with this? We all know that cell phones are not going away. So how can we effectively manage this? One of the things that we're going to do, and the sixth grade developed this policy, and myself and Mr. Levangi certainly support it, is that phones are okay to have in the building, but they need to be on silent and they need to be in the students' backpacks at all times. If a student's not carrying a backpack, then the pocket's fine, but most all kids will carry a bag of some kind. They need to be there. In a normal year, we have a little, like a shoe pocket that we put phones in where kids can drop their phone off on the way into class and then get it on the way out. Obviously, with COVID, we want to make sure that we're not having kids reaching their hands into these dirty pockets to get their phones, so we've eliminated that. We do want parents to have the security of that if there is an issue, that they have access to their child, but one of the things that we're going to ask is that the phones are silent when they're in the backpack. It so often happens, and I won't put my teachers on the spot, but I know they will smile and agree with me. Sometimes when I go to visit a classroom, I can see phones going off in the pocket holder where all the phones are, and I might grab one just to see if it's another student, and it's the parent calling during the middle of science class or something like that. So this way, we're going to ask, please only call them if it's an emergency. They'll have the opportunity to check their voicemail, to check texts at lunch. They'll have those opportunities, so you won't not ever hear from them. But we are going to ask that students really maintain this. We're just trying to reduce the level of distraction in an increasingly distracted world. And so this is our sixth grade cell phone policy. If you have any questions about that, we can certainly discuss it later, or you can email myself or Mr. Levangi to get more information. All right, next slide, Matt. That might be the last one. All right, so before we get into questions, I'm sure there are a ton, and I want to address a few things before we get to the Q&A. First thing, homework. One of the questions that we will always get is, what does homework look like at the middle school? I am highly encouraging my teachers to reduce or even eliminate the amount of homework that they give, that they've used to do, for a number of reasons. I have never been convinced, after 17 years as a classroom teacher and now 3 years as a principal, that massive amounts of homework equal rigor or challenge. Giving a kid a lot of homework doesn't necessarily make your class more difficult. What we want to do is develop a love of learning. We want the homework that kids do have and the projects that they do to be engaging and exciting and applicable, things that they can use in the real world as opposed to busy work. So to reduce screen time, to reduce stress in a stressful world, we want to reduce that. So I'm highly encouraging our teachers, with my permission, to reduce or even get rid of it. It doesn't mean the kids will never have something to do at home. Obviously, there will be projects that they need to work on. If there's something that they were working on in class and were unable to finish, that might be homework because they need to get ready for the next class. So there will be those things, but we really want to pull back the homework and really evaluate what does homework really mean? What does it look like? How do we make it valuable? And we don't want to pile on in an already stressful situation. As you saw, the schedules, one of the questions that I've gotten the most over the last few days is, when will we get our schedules? Normally at the middle school, we don't distribute schedules until just a couple of days before the school year starts. When I first started, we gave them out plenty early, and what we found was that kids were comparing schedules. I'm not in a class with my friend. We'd get angry emails saying, can you switch my student with this and that? I will tell you right now, that's going to be very difficult for us to do. And I'll explain why in just a second. But what we started a couple of years ago was waiting till just a couple of days before to distribute schedules. In sixth grade, all students take the same classes. They all have the same math, ELA, science, history, even their language classes are the same. The teachers are the same. The only real question is who's in their class. Well, in this post-COVID world, those kids that are going to be sitting in the room with your children may not be the closest of friends. The friend might be at home because their last name starts with a different letter, or they've chosen full remote. This is going to be a unique experience. And so I will say that creating the schedules has been an enormous challenge. Just trying to figure out who's remote, who's hybrid, who's coming in 4 days a week, who's got this, who needs that, and then trying to balance the classes with, all right, making sure that there's not more than 12 or 13 in a room on Mondays and Tuesdays with the last name of A to K, and making sure there's not more than 12 in the room on Thursdays and Fridays whose last names start with L through Z, so that the classes aren't lopsided and creating a situation where we're overcrowding classes. It's been an extreme challenge. My hope is to have the schedules ready to go Friday afternoon, but I have a feeling it might be Monday. I have a feeling I'm going to spend yet another weekend cranking these things out. So if you don't get them Friday, my apologies. Just understand there is dozens and dozens and dozens of hours of work that go into creating this. And in trying to get a building started, there are still changes that are happening with schedules. So at the very least, you'll have them on Monday, hopefully by Friday. If there's a question that you have about a schedule, you can certainly email and ask me beforehand, but we won't distribute them until that time. When we do, they will be made available through Aspen. Aspen is our program where you can check your students' grades, you can check their attendance, you can see their schedule, all kinds of information we use through Aspen. You will get a tutorial, you will get information from our tech department, from me, what you can expect, how to log in, those things if you're not already familiar with it. Those certain types of access will be provided to you. Let us know if you don't have access to it, and we can certainly make that happen. And so that's where you'll see number of questions that we got around where will I see my child's assignments. That's going to come through Google Classroom. Google Classroom is the platform that we're going to use. All students will have access to their codes in Google Classroom, so that when they're online at home and they're going to, let's say, Mr. O'Sullivan's history class, they go to his Google Classroom page. The link that they'll need to get online will be right there. Once the kids see it, it'll all be contained right in front of them, so they can go to their classes. It's just a matter of clicking back and forth. So they'll become very proficient very quickly. We don't add parents to Google Classroom. It gets to be just too cumbersome, too many emails, too much information to try and manage. So if you have a question about assignments, please ask your students to show you their Google Classroom page. You can look and see what they have. But one little trick that the students learn, and I'm going to let you in, parents, on this, because they think they're very sneaky, but they're not. There is a way that students can turn in a blank assignment, and it shows that they turned it in. So they might say to you, Mom, I did my assignment. Look, Google Classroom says I turned it in. The teacher has a blank page. It doesn't take them very long to figure that out. So if you have questions, please reach out to the teacher. Sometimes things get turned in and it's not necessarily what they're saying that they turned in. So that part you'll have to work with your child. If you want to see their Google Classroom page, they can certainly allow that, but that's not just something we have the ability to do outside of our network to include families in their Google Classroom pages. Arrival and dismissal. Just want to take a quick second to address that. When students arrive and they get up let's talk about bus students first. 6th grade students will enter through the front doors of the building. I will be there, or Mr. Levangi will be there, or somebody will be out front checking kids as they get off the bus, make sure everybody's got their mask on, safely distanced. They will enter the building through the first set of doors, and they'll see clearly marked. And as they go in, they'll head towards the cafeteria and they'll take a left, and that's the 6th grade hallway. We're going to show you what all this looks like here in just a minute. That's where they will begin their day. So that's what arrival is going to look like. Starting at 7:05 as the buses drop kids off, they'll head right to their classrooms. It used to be that we'd let students hang out in the cafeteria if they arrived early. Sometimes the buses show up a few minutes early. We'd let kids hang out in the cafeteria. Obviously, we're not going to be able to do that this year with social distancing rules. So we are still in the process of working out, while the weather's nice, do we have kids waiting outside safely distanced until 7:05? When the weather gets bad, maybe we can have kids enter, sit apart in the gym bleachers. We're still working out the final details of what that will look like. Dismissal will work very similar. The students will return to their flex. They'll get their backpacks ready. They'll get everything that they need. And then we let bus students out first. So just the bus students will be let out class by class, so everybody's safely distanced. They'll walk to the buses and they'll get on in their assigned seat. Then once the buses have left, then the walkers get to leave and the kids that are being picked up. So we ask them to stay in their classes until our bus students have left. If you are bringing students to school, a couple things that we ask. One, if it's at all possible not to drop the kids off before 7:05. Our teachers are not contractually obligated until 7:05 to have kids, but a lot of times there's an early meeting, there's something going on, a teacher might be getting a cup of coffee or doing something, and they're not in their room, and we certainly don't want students to be in the room unsupervised. So we'll ask that you please, if when possible, wait until 7:05 to let them out of the car. As you enter the school, and you'll see an image here in a few minutes, that we have our bus lane and our drop-off lane. A lot of times parents will want to wait till they get to the front of the drop-off lane to let kids out. You don't have to do that. You can let them out at the back of the drop-off lane and they can walk up to the building. This will keep the line of cars moving. What you'll notice is that when people wait in the drop-off line, the line of cars backs out onto Russell Street and creates a traffic jam. So as soon as you get up to the drop-off lane, you can let the child out and they can come right up to the building. We have plenty of crosswalks. We have monitors to make sure that no one will get hit. And this way it keeps the traffic flow moving. One thing that we're going to ask, please, please, please do not drop your child off in our parking lot. We have people that enter the building a little bit late. There have been a couple times in the last year where a teacher almost got hit in the parking lot because a parent who was late flying through the parking lot didn't see somebody. We certainly don't want a teacher to get hit. We don't want a student to be hit by a car. So please don't use the parking lot. It's a large parking lot and the temptation will be there. But please, we just never know. And kids are so quick to dart from between cars. Please don't put them in danger by doing that. And we'll show you pictures of what all that might look like here in a second. So that'll be the arrival. The dismissal will work the same way. After the buses leave, if parents want to pull up in the pickup lane, they certainly can do that. For kids that are able to walk, we can certainly do that. And again, if you have any questions, we can go from there. I want to talk just a little bit about some of the other things that we have in terms of safety. One of the things that we're really trying to do this year is eliminate the amount of people that come in and out of our building. A school is a public place, and there are a lot of people who need to come in for various reasons. We get a lot of parents who want to drop off a lunch because a child forgot a lunchbox or they forgot their backpack. We've even had it in the past where children have called Dunkin' Donuts and had somebody go pick up the order and deliver it to the school. We can't do any of that stuff this year. So one of the things that we're asking parents to work with us on is not entering the building when students and teachers are in the building. At the front of the building, we'll have a 6-foot folding table set up, clearly marked. So if you need to drop something off, you can drop it off there. You can hit the intercom buzzer and let our front office staff know that you're dropping off for a child. That way you don't have to enter the building and you can actually get in and out more quickly. Our front office staff will grab the lunchbox, the bags, the books, whatever it might be, and bring it in and call the student down. Same works for dismissal. If you need to take your child out of school for whatever reason, rather than waiting in the office or waiting in the lobby, we're asking parents just to wait outside under the overhang. We'll call the students down and we'll dismiss them to you. In this way, this partnership is really going to help us keep our educators and our students safe. And once things settle down, we can maybe then go back to some sense of normal. But at least right now to start, until we know how this thing works, we're really going to ask parents to join us in this journey of safety and partnership. One of the things that we want to address too is getting materials to students. There are times where teachers are going to want students to work with a pen and paper, colored pencils, read an actual book, right? Scissors, whatever it might be. That's hard to do virtually, especially if the books are at our school. How do we get them to students? And so one of the things that myself and Mr. Levangi have committed ourselves to doing, and we're going to work with the teams to develop the routine around this. If there are materials that need to go home, textbooks, packets of information, hard copies of things, he and I will put out an email to families and we'll pick a day and a time and we'll just stand outside and families can drive up and get what they need and drive off. That way it's nice, easy, grab and go. You don't have to enter the school. You can stay nice and safe. Everyone can remain safely distanced and you can still get those materials that you need. And so we'll be working with the teams around scheduling that, how often that happens, and how we can coordinate those efforts so that it's not an everyday kind of thing. So just know that there might be days where something needs to be picked up at the school, but we want to make it as convenient as we possibly can so that families can just drive up, get what they need, and go. I think for the most part, that covers a lot of the big side issues. One of the things that I do want to say, in all seriousness, a few people here might have heard me say this already. My wife's a teacher in Newton, and she's been watching the school committee meetings with me. And for those that have attended, we all know it's must-see TV. And she has been blown away by the level of support that Littleton families have for their educators and their kids. We got done with one a couple of weeks ago, and she just looked at me and she goes, Jason, she goes, your parents are awesome. She's like, we don't get that in Newton. Like, we don't get that kind of support. It really is incredible. And it's not like that everywhere. And I'm not just saying that to you all to butter you up. It really is. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for your support, because while some of the things that we've discussed here today might be inconvenient and they might not be the easiest for a child or a parent, the fact that I know that you all know that we're doing what we have to in the best interest of our students and our staff, your willingness to go along with that is amazing. And I just want to say, even teachers in other districts recognize how special this relationship is. So thank all of you. And on that note, one thing that I am going to ask you, when we get into next Wednesday, there are going to be tech issues. Our teachers are currently practicing. They're setting up their cameras. I know that I've heard stories of one teacher in one room trying to practice online teaching to a teacher in another room. All these things that we're practicing, we all know, as much as you prepare something and you're ready for it to roll out, and the first day and then something happens, it's going to happen. And all I ask is for your patience. So before you send that angry email saying my kid can't get online, just know that we are doing our best. And this is brand new for all of us. And we are going to have those hiccups. As much as we prepare ourselves, it's going to happen. The other thing I think too, and to be serious about this, is to recognize that, and I've heard Matt say this, and I'm going to repeat it with his permission. We are not an online university. We don't specialize in graduate level remote learning courses. And so we are middle school educators who do middle school things, and our people are working as hard as they can to prepare for that. So I just want that to be understood too. Like, I know you'll be understanding, but our people are working really hard. And so as we move forward with this, they will get better, right? It will. The technology will get better. They'll get more proficient. We'll get more supportive of them. It'll all happen the way that we want it to. And so I just ask that you recognize that there's going to be that learning curve at the beginning. And I know that support for your students and our educators is there. And so I'm just going to ask you in this moment to really help us out with that part as we figure out this new system. So that's just about it. I have one last thing I want to show you. Matt, can you pull up the virtual tour that you have waiting? And then I'll be largely done talking. One of our teachers, our special education teachers, Angie Gresco, along with the work of student Brandon Zabo, created this virtual tour. And we won't walk you through the whole thing, but once this meeting is done, I will email all of you the link so that you can see it yourself. This is awesome. So Matt, if you want to hit the hand, we'll just give them a quick tour. And for those that really want to enter the building, those that want to see what their teachers look like and hear their voices and see their classroom, you'll be able to do all of that virtually. And I cannot give enough thanks to Angie and Brandon for producing this, because I know we have students who are anxious. I know we have teachers who are anxious and parents who are anxious. I'm hoping that this will help. Yeah, Matt, is it that one? Why don't you go ahead and click that? So you'll be able to see as you go through this, and there's so many features. They actually brought in a drone and flew a drone over the building to do like aerial shots. And so when I say what we're talking about, Matt, if you don't mind using the cursor just to show like where the drop-off lane is, for example. So you can see that's Angie in her white van driving up right there, right? She's heading into the bus lane. That's our drop-off lane where Matt has the cursor. So you can pull up, the kids can get out right there, and they can walk to the building. That's my car. I feel like I live at school these days. I should have just brought a sleeping bag and a pillow and just made that my home. You can see that this is where students will enter the building through the crosswalk when they've been dropped off by people in the car or by the buses. So these are the front entry doors. So for those that are unfamiliar with the building. So 6th graders will enter this way. Those of you that have students that are in the 7th and the 8th grade, 7th grade students will go to the left and they'll enter the set of double doors at the end of the school. 8th graders will go to the right and they'll enter the doors by the gym. This way we're breaking the 3 grades up so that we don't have kids crowding in the hallways. That was a real important part of our plan. Matt, can you show them the 6th grade wing? If they go to LMS building map. No, the big yellow one there. There you go. So if you'll click the 6th grade wing. So Angie and Brandon actually brought the drone into the building. And so you can get a sense of what the 6th grade hallway looks like. And so while it's not as good as being in the building, I think this is pretty dang cool and a real great representation so when students can see. So on the right, that is Mr. O'Sullivan's room for history. Students will go down as we enter the hallway. The next room on the right will be Miss Tricana in ELA. The next room on the right will be Miss Benedictus. The next room on the left will be Miss Cook for science. And right next to that is Miss Deary's room. So you can watch this over and over and over again. So if your kids are feeling anxious or having a hard time imagining what that's going to look like, that's where they'll do. And I think it's cool. So they flew the drone right down the hallway and took this amazing footage. If you look at, actually, Matt, will you go back to that really quickly? I want to show you the arrows. So this is the 7th grade hallway. But if you look to the right, you'll see how the arrows we have this year really are going to think grocery store in terms of how we move students through the hallways. We'll have a line down the center. Our Matt and our custodian, Sean, have been putting stickers down and putting arrows down so that students will walk from their classes. If you are leaving, for example, for a 7th grade teacher, if you're leaving Miss Tatro's room and you have to go see Mr. Dennis, you're going to head down the hallway just like you were driving in traffic. But if you're in Miss Tatro's room and you need to get to Miss Finn's room, you're going to need to make a left-hand turn. So we're going to ask, just like you do in traffic, you might have to wait for the crowd to go by, safely distanced, before you can make that left-hand turn. And all the floor spots will be marked so that students can do this. This would be very difficult to pull off if we had a full school of students. But because we're hybrid, the small numbers allow us to do this safely. Our teams will get very good at releasing students and working out the finer details of how to coordinate all of that. Matt, do you want to head back one more second and maybe show the cafeteria? There you go. Oh, you're there. Keep going up. There it is. So our cafeteria, normally this is where our students would be having lunch, but this year, because of our COVID restrictions, we're largely using it for storage. Students will not be having lunch in the cafeteria. And I know for many of our students and some of our families, they wish they were, and so do we. I know our educators would much rather our students be eating in the cafeteria. The problem is it's a numbers game. For the entire 6th grade to have lunch in the cafeteria, the students would just not be safely distanced. So students will be having lunch in their classroom. Teachers will not be in the room. It'll be myself, Mr. Levangie. It might be teacher aides who are supervising this. And the way lunches will work, students will be released for lunch. Those students who brought their lunch can simply get their lunch out in their classroom and eat. Those students that get lunch from the cafeteria will head down the hallway, safely distanced, following the arrows, and they'll enter the cafeteria, which is also marked so that students stay safe. One of the things that we're doing this year is we're eliminating a lot of the choices. So students will have three choices: a hot lunch, a cold lunch, or a salad. They'll come through, they'll pick up what they've ordered, it'll be handed to them, and then they'll pay for it using a swipe card that you should be getting information on from our food services department in the next couple of days. They'll get their meals and they'll walk around the cafeteria, out and back to their classroom. The whole thing is a grab and go. Students aren't touching any of each other's food. If students want condiments, if they need a fork and knife, the kitchen staff will hand that to them. They'll carry their materials in a bag, a plastic bag that we give them, and includes drinks, milks, juice, whatever that might be, so that there's no spills in the hallway. One of the things that we're also eliminating are extra desserts and extra drinks. Normally during cafeteria time, students could go back and get a dessert. They could get ice cream. Really trying to eliminate that. And it is unfortunate for kids. It's one of the things that they do love about middle school. It's just not something we can safely do at this time. It's certainly something that maybe we can look to add to a little bit later on down the road. And so that's basically the way lunch will work. At the end of lunch, the students will be responsible for cleaning their own desks. We'll have wipes, we'll have gloves, hand sanitizer. The kids will clean up their area. They will not be sitting at large tables with their friends. Lunch is not going to be a social hour like it would be during a normal day. So it's something to prepare your students for as well. This is not going to be a social time. They'll be sitting at their desk safely, eating their lunch, just like they will in their classes. So we don't do recess at the middle school. Even if we did, we'd be cutting that out because there's just no way to maintain that kind of safety. Same with the cafeteria experience. The kids will go get their food. They will come back. They will clean up their area. When a student enters the classroom, they will also be responsible for cleaning and wiping their own desks. Our teachers just simply don't have the time between classes to wipe down every single desk for every single student. This is a great opportunity for students to learn independence. We'll certainly give them coaching and help them do it. And who knows, maybe your student will come home such a better cleaner than they ever were when they were at home. And you'll be amazed at the skills that they've learned and how to clean something and sanitize it effectively. So just know that that's the way that we intend to do that. One of the things that we want to do is have students clean up their desk before they sit down so that they're doing a good job rather than just doing a partially good job for somebody else that they may or may not know on the way out. And so tonight, I'll send you this link. If you want to go through, there are videos. Almost every teacher sent in a video introducing themselves so you can get to know the teachers in the building. You can see the different parts of the building. Just about everything you could want to know is created in this. I cannot give enough credit to Angie and to Brandon for creating this. And so for those that want to spend a little time getting to know our building, please, you'll have the opportunity to do that today. And if you have any further questions when it comes to that, you'll certainly have that ability to reach out to Matt or I. And so that's really our presentation. I have a few questions that people asked. I'm just going to take a couple of quick minutes. I know we're getting close to 7. I talked a lot longer than I wanted to. So most of it that we dealt with, one question came up around clubs. Will we be offering clubs this year? The answer is yes. What those clubs are and how they work will still be determined. Right now, we're also busy just getting the first day of school underway, but we do intend to fully have clubs. Whether they're virtual or small group in person remains to be seen, and what those options are. We don't normally have the clubs begin until about October anyway, so it's not something that we're particularly rushed for this year. Another great question that somebody asked about how students at home can integrate with their classmates. One of the things that we're encouraging our teachers to do is to really create opportunities for students to do group work virtually. So a student who might be in the classroom in front of a teacher might be partnered with a student at home to work on something in the same class together. While they're not physically together in the room, they can be working back and forth. So our teachers will provide opportunities for students to get to know each other. So it's not just the in-person kids getting to know each other and the remote kids being left out. We really intend to weave a lot of this through so that everybody has an opportunity to get to know their classmates, to build friendships, to add friendships, and to develop that love of learning that we hope to do. Another great question was, how do we check for progress? Our teams meet every day. The 6th grade team has a team meeting every day, and one of the things that they talk about are students. Every day, they're checking in with each other. Hey, I noticed this kid seemed a little down today. Did anybody else notice? This student is struggling in my class. Are you having any concerns? The level of discourse that they have about students in this team is amazing. And having been part of it now for 3 years, there is not a student that we don't talk about and make sure that we are following and tracking their progress. So for those that are worried if their child at home is going to be left behind or start to slip, I promise you, our teachers will know if the child is not performing, if we feel like something is wrong. We don't wait until report card time to discover that, oh, things haven't been going well. The level of discourse that we have with our teachers and to find those students who are struggling, the level of care that they have for these kids, which is, it's so true of middle school teachers and especially 6th grade teachers, how 6th grade teachers just love kids that they've barely even met and really develop that fondness. And so that was really what carries our team. And then, one of the bigger questions that we had too was around mask breaks. One of the things that we're going to ask is that our UA teachers, when possible, provide students with a mask break during their class. Their 80-minute classes allow for students we can take the students outside, they can take the mask off, safely distance for a couple minutes, get some nice fresh air. They'll have the opportunity to take their mask off while they're eating. And then any teachers during the day that also want to create mask breaks for their students, we certainly can do that as well. Ideally, we take students outside. We just have to coordinate it at the school level so that we don't have 15 or 17 classrooms of kids all pouring out of the building at the same time, just so that everybody is safely distanced. But we intend to give students multiple mask breaks throughout the day and as often as possible outside. Once the weather turns, then we have some other plans that we certainly have for that. So I've been talking for almost an hour. Now I want to throw it open. Do we just have a small handful of questions that people want to ask, something pressing, sixth grade wise, that we can certainly get into? And please, if you can limit it to just one question, just so we can make sure to get through everybody, that would be great. So Dorothy, whenever you're ready to send them on through, we can do that.
I'm muted. Eileen Wiedengartner, please ask your question.
Hi there. So I have a quick question around when it comes to knowing our students have succeeded in the classroom goals. Is there going to be a really specific list of criteria for success for parents to see, to know like, okay, they've made this, we can move forward? And I guess along with that, when you're having hiccups getting kids online, I know there's math and ELA programs kids can get onto, but are there science and history ones kids can get onto in the interim?
Yeah, we have. I believe it's still on the website, and I'm sure our teachers will update it throughout the year. When we went to remote learning last year, one of the things that we asked teachers to do was really come up with a list of resources that were grade level appropriate, academically appropriate for students to be able to access, so that while they were doing asynchronous learning and teaching themselves in some cases, that they had resources to go to. So we'll certainly have that. In terms of developing goals for students to check progress, teachers have their own levels of what mastery is in their class. And so they do a great job of communicating what those expectations are, whether it's through a rubric at the beginning of a project, whether it's through a task, helping kids to understand like this, and this is what done looks like. This is what proficient looks like. They'll be certainly doing that, providing that feedback. It isn't a series of checks and balances like we might think of, like, okay, you have to do this before we move on to the next thing, because sometimes some students don't develop a mastery of every skill but the teacher knows that that's a skill they're going to be using in the next unit, and they can further develop it there. And so we have a great veteran staff in our sixth grade who is really very good about seeing just where the students are, what they need to do to help a student perfect those skills, where to offer strength, where to offer challenge, and be able to move on. So the kids are in good hands.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you. Pranay and Sarasha, your question, please.
Sorry, this is Kameshwari. My kids use my laptop, so they renamed it. Sorry, I didn't change it.
It's okay.
Anyways, yeah. So my son is an incoming sixth grader, and I'm very excited and at the same time nervous in this current situation. But Jason, thank you so much for your, assuring that it will be a smooth sail even in this, pandemic situation. I really appreciate that. So my question is, right, for the remote learning kids, right, how are you going to balance the remote and the hybrid? Is there going to be dedicated teachers for remote learning kids, or is the teacher who is teaching in the building is going to juggle around with the remote and the in-class students?
No, it's a fair question, and we'll address it quickly. We are not offering a separate set of teachers for just remote students. I know that some of that is happening at Russell Street and at Shaker Lane. The nature of their schedule and the way that students take classes there allows for that. At our school, we'd have to hire 7 teachers to pull that off. And for the number of students that we have, it wasn't really feasible. I will say that we did look into it. I created mock schedules, tried to figure out what that would look like. We could just never get to a point where we felt like it was providing the best opportunity. So just so you all know, what's going to happen is when a student is remote, or they're just part of the hybrid at home, or they're in the building, the teachers will have a document camera, like a tower camera that will stand up, and the camera will be right there. So they'll be teaching the students as if there was no camera. It'll be just like it used to be. But what they'll have is the camera facing them, so the students at home are able to see the teacher, hear the teacher, and be able to get the same education as if they were in the class with them. It'll feel a little clunky to start for kids and teachers, but once you kind of get used to it, Matt and I did our first couple of meetings of the year using it, and you do get to a point where it becomes kind of second nature. You don't really notice it. Students in the classroom, their faces will not be shown on the camera. So if you're worried about privacy, we're not showing your students' faces to everybody in the greater Littleton area, and vice versa. So please know that that's the case. Teachers have the ability to mute and unmute. So if they want to take questions or if there's group work that's happening and we don't want just necessarily that conversation or that ambient noise being broadcast, they'll have that ability. So we are constantly looking at privacy and how we do that effectively. So all students will receive the same lesson. It's just really the only thing that's going to change is their geography, whether they're in the building or at home.
Thank you so much, Jason.
You're welcome. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Dustin Neild, your question, please.
Hi, thanks. Just curious if students are required to use the school-issued Chromebook or if they can use a personal laptop, and what's the transition time allowed between classes?
So what last year when we went to our one-to-one, thank you, Dustin, for the question. It's a good one. Last year, we allowed students who had their own device, in certain circumstances to use it. Where it got to be tricky, and it never really did become an issue, because when we do MAP testing or MCAS testing, they have to use the school-issued device. Just for security reasons, that's a state mandate. That's not something that we can choose. So to begin the year, because of the Google Suite and the need to be on the network, we're asking that students use the school-issued device. We can certainly talk more, offline or later in the week if there are special circumstances. And in some cases there are. Students with vision impairments might need larger screens and things like that. Like, we're certainly willing to be flexible and accommodate in that way. But for the vast majority of our students, we're asking that they use the school-issued device. The passing time is really about 2 to 3 minutes, but for the first part of the year, we're gonna have a sort of a wide berth with that, because kids will be learning the building. They will be trying to find the way. It's not a huge school. It's not tiny, but it's not super big. So kids can get from their math class to their health class in just a couple of minutes if they're just walking at a normal pace. So we say 2 to 3 minutes usually is the passing time.
Thank you.
You bet.
I don't see any other questions, Jason.
Well, that means we did just such a thorough job. That's excellent. All right, then. Well, it's 7:04. Listen, to all your families out there, if you have other questions, the first thing I will do when I get off this is I will send out that link so that all of you can check out the virtual tour. If you have other questions, if there are concerns that you have, please reach out to us. Oh, did somebody jump in at the last minute, Dorothy?
One more, yes.
Sure.
Sayaban Magra, your question, please.
Hi, I just had a quick question. So you mentioned that kids would be going outside for possible outdoor learning for mask breaks. So if your child is remote that day, how does that work?
So one of the things that we're working with, it's a great question, by the way, because this gets into like instructional practice, and it's part of an ongoing conversation that we're having with our UA team specifically. I will be honest, 80 minutes is a long time to sit and be focused on anything, let alone the classroom work. And so what we're really trying to do with our UA teams is work on how do we chunk that time in a way that's effective. So for example, this is just one sample of many that we could cite, but this is one way that it could work. Let's say a student enters their health class. Ms. Bonacore, the teacher, might do a 10, 15-minute launch of a lesson, an introduction, saying, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's what you need to know to get started. And then she may give the students at home a task, which would be the same or very similar to the students in class. One of the things that she would have the freedom to do is that she might say, okay, listen, you guys at home, I'm going to take the kids in front of me out for a mask break. While we do this, I want you all to stand up, stretch, walk around the house, get a drink of water. Let's you take a break as well. And then she can literally put a timer on her screen and say, okay, we're going to meet back here in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is. So the student at home will see that timer. So we can build breaks into the day that it might seem like wasted time, but actually when you look at how it's going to make kids more engaged and energized in the lesson, it'll actually, I think, they'll get more than their 80 minutes out of it. I think it's really the way to go. So this is how we would build those in. We still maintain that high level of engagement. Kids at home would still be given a task. kids in class would still be doing a similar, if not the same task. And then there's sort of a coming back together, whether it's a few minutes later towards the end of the period. If you're in a math class, for example, Joanne might say, okay, I'm going to do my 20 minutes. All right, you guys at home, I want you to work on this for 15 minutes. All right, come back to me with something on a pen and paper, take a screenshot, a snapshot, whatever it might be, and give kids that time to work. And so those breaks will be built in as part of their instructional practice. It also will help kids get off the screen, so they're just not staring at a screen for 6.5 hours straight. And so we are encouraging our teachers to develop their practice to be able to break things up so that kids can do what they do. And in reality, it's the way it would be in a normal situation. A teacher very rarely would stand there for 45 minutes lecturing. They would do their thing for 10, 12, 15 minutes and then break the kids off to do their work. And so that part will be almost exactly the same as it was before.
Okay, and I just have a quick follow-up. Well, not a follow-up, another question. Especially if I'm the last one asking questions for the night. In terms of IEPs, those I believe are scheduled into your unified arts blocks. Is that correct?
In most cases, depending on what the IEP says, yeah, sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. It depends. And that's where it gets tricky because we're talking about an individualized plan. So I hate to go too far down that road if that's all right with you.
No, it's perfectly fine. When can we expect to know that? Will it just be when schedules are distributed?
So you'll know which UAs, if that's a UA that they're missing, if it's something bigger, if it's a world language that they're missing, that'll all be contained in the schedule. Barbara Dickman, special ed liaison, will also be reaching out to families in the next few days to help with that information so that come the first day, everybody should know exactly where their children are, what the services are going to be, and what it's going to look like as we move forward.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right, you bet.
Oh, one more.
One more.
Danette,
We're so
your
close.
question, please.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make you.
No, it's great, Danette. Thank you. Not a worry.
First of all, thank you. This has been comprehensive and excellent.
Good.
I just, following that, I was just going to send you a separate message, but there might be other people who need to know. Who is the 504 liaison?
So that is our adjustment counselor, Sarah Dorfman. Sarah will be starting off the year on a bit of a leave. There's a family issue that she's taking care of. And so we are in the process right now of bringing in somebody to fill in for those services. One of the things that we'll have to do is assign that 504. Most likely it will probably be myself. It could be Mr. Levangi, or we might even tap our school psychologist, Danya Sklar, to help with that. So we're not, I promise you, we're not going to begin the year without somebody managing our 504s. It's a big part of what we do.
Okay. So I guess the real concern is that at Russell Street, the main teacher would get their 504, but not the teachers they went out to for other subjects, which doesn't really work for a kid.
No, yeah, I don't know how that came to be there. All I can tell you is at our school, every teacher has access to the 504s. Our 504 coordinator is constantly making sure that we have the latest information, that we're following what we need to follow. You'll see that it's a different kind of service at the middle school.
Okay, great. Thanks.
All right. Well, on that note, then let everybody get out of here. Go have some fun tonight if you can. Get the kids practicing those masks. If you need anything from myself or Mr. Levangi, reach out at any time. We'd love to hear from you. And we'll be seeing you all soon and can't wait to see the kids. And take care. Everybody have a great night.